My name is Tessa Lynn, and I'm 31. From the time I could form thoughts, I understood one thing. Love in my family was not free. It came with conditions, scorecards, and comparisons, and somehow I always fell short. When I was 5, my little brother Eli was born. The whole world, or at least our cramped household in Indiana, started revolving around that chubby, pink-cheeked baby, my mom. Diane transformed overnight, crocheting baby socks with his name, starting a blog called Raising Eli, even making matching outfits for their family photos, of which I was frequently cropped out. And my dad, Graham, who used to take me to the park on Saturdays, suddenly had a new hobby, filming Eli burping, crawling, and making unintelligible noises like he'd discovered a tiny prophet. I became the helper, the extra, the ghost in the background of the Eli show. At 6, I remember showing my mom a drawing I'd worked on for 2 hours, an emerald green dragon flying over a golden castle. She squinted, set it down, and said, "That's a little strange. Why not draw something sweet like Eli? He's so cute when he smiles." She turned back to spooning applesauce into his mouth. I folded the drawing quietly and slid it under my mattress. Years later, I found it still there, creased, untouched, and forgotten, just like me. Eli was the golden child, dimpled, outgoing, good at piano. Everything he did got celebrated. I, on the other hand, was the weird kid who read too much, hunched over books with Coke bottle glasses. When I brought home a perfect spelling test, my mom said, "Don't let all that studying make you boring." When I was 10, I won first prize in a statewide short story competition. I begged my parents to come to the award ceremony. They didn't. They were busy taking Eli to his first taekwondo lesson. When I got home with the certificate, Mom glanced at it and said, "Don't get a big head. Humility is important." Meanwhile, when Eli got 3rd place in a school art contest for finger painting a tree, we had pizza cake and party balloons in the kitchen. I didn't cry. I just got used to being invisible. By 13, I was essentially a live-in maid with good grades. I washed dishes, vacuumed, folded laundry, and helped Eli with his science fair models. Every complaint I had was met with the same line. "You're the older one. Tessa, you should know better. You should give more." But how much is more? I remember one winter evening, I fainted at the kitchen table after skipping dinner for the 3rd day in a row. I'd been saving money from tutoring to buy a used laptop. Mom just shook me awake and said, "Get up, stop being dramatic. We still have to clean before Eli's friends come over." That was the night I gave up expecting love from them. The only thing I wanted was to leave. So I did. On my 18th birthday, I packed a duffel bag and my acceptance letter to Northwestern University, full scholarship. No one saw me off. No hugs, not even a good luck. Mom texted me later that night, "Don't embarrass us. Stay out of trouble." I didn't respond. Chicago welcomed me with snow, solitude, and the quiet hum of new beginnings. I chose to study biochemistry, something my mom used to mock as a lonely person's subject. But I loved it. Molecules didn't judge me. Enzymes didn't ask for sacrifices. I worked part-time at the library, cleaned lab beakers on weekends, and never went to parties. I didn't need social life. I needed freedom. Every dollar I earned, I saved. Every bonus, every raise went into one goal: to own something that no one could ever take from me. By 29, I did it. I signed papers for a modest but beautiful 3-bedroom home in Evanston. It had a cherry tree in the yard, a little balcony for reading, and a kitchen with granite counters. I picked myself. I painted the walls, I installed the light fixtures, I made it mine. It wasn't just a house, it was proof. Proof that I wasn't the useless background character they made me out to be. I mailed a small card to my parents, not to boast, just out of closure. It read, "I'm doing fine, no need to worry." No one replied. I didn't expect them to. But I should have known it wasn't the end, not with them. 3 months later, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "First one in years. Call me when you can. It's about Eli. It's important." I stared at the screen. Heartbeat flat. Not a single message from them in over a decade. But now they wanted to talk. I didn't call. A week later, a thick envelope arrived. Inside was an invitation to Eli's engagement party, gold-trimmed embossed lettering, the works, fancy, too fancy. Tucked beside it was a note in Mom's stiff, familiar handwriting. "We'd like a quick word before the party. Don't be difficult, just be a good sister." My stomach twisted. I didn't know what they wanted, but I knew it wasn't love. Still, I went, curiosity maybe, or just a craving to confirm what I already suspected. The party was held in a rental mansion outside Lake Forest opulence, dripping from every chandelier. Crystal flutes, velvet tablecloths, guests dressed like they were auditioning for a reality show. I wore a black sheath dress, simple, elegant, and I carried a small gift, a photo frame engraved with "Wishing you joy, always." As I walked in, Mom greeted me with her usual smile, the one that didn't reach her eyes. She didn't hug me. She looked me up and down and whispered, "Your father wants a word. Back room now." The dread in my chest returned like a reflex, like muscle memory. Dad stood by the window when I entered, hands clasped behind his back. Silent. Then without turning, he said, "You have your house now. Good for you. But Eli, he needs a future. A good start. We think it's time you shared." I blinked. "What do you mean, share?" Mom walked in, closing the door behind her. "The house," she said, "transfer it to Eli and his fiancée as a wedding gift." I stared at them, at the people who gave me nothing, not even a hug when I left home. And now they wanted the only thing I built. I laughed, quiet, bitter. "A gift worth $500,000. Dad shrugged. "You live alone? You don't need it. He has a whole life ahead of him. You can rent somewhere small." Something in me cracked clean and permanent. No, I said it like I'd waited 30 years to speak it. Mom's eyes flared. "Tessa, don't be selfish. Family helps family." I looked her dead in the eye. "I sacrificed everything. My childhood, my joy, my health, so he could shine, and you call me selfish." She opened her mouth to speak, but I was already walking out. Back in the hall, Eli was laughing with his fiancée. He didn't even glance at me, but when I passed, I caught the briefest flicker in his eyes, annoyance. Like I'd disrupted his perfect narrative. I left early. No dessert, no toasts, no fake smiles. Outside, my phone buzzed again. A text from Eli. "Are you seriously going to ruin this for me?" I didn't reply, but I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I should have trusted my gut and stayed away. But part of me, maybe the foolish, wounded part, still hoped for some kind of decency. Eli's wedding was set for the following month. A full-scale production hosted at a glass conservatory in Highland Park. String lights, live orchestra, imported linens, nothing short of a royal affair. I RSVP'd yes out of spite more than love. I wanted to see just how far they'd go this time. I chose a steel blue dress, simple but tailored. I brought a card. No cash inside. Just 4 words. "May your life be honest." I arrived 15 minutes early and was immediately placed at the farthest table near the caterer's cart. The seating card said, "T. Lynn family distant, a joke, a dig." Probably both. No one greeted me. Not Eli, not Mom, not Dad, not even a nod. I sat silently drinking water while everyone else clinked champagne glasses. The ceremony started late. Guests whispered about delays, but I knew exactly what was happening behind the scenes. They weren't ready to deal with my presence. When the vows finally began, Eli stood beneath the floral arch, glowing like a man who had never been told no a single day in his life. His bride Renee looked picture perfect, tall, graceful, wearing a $9,000 designer dress I overheard someone brag about during the cocktail hour. They exchanged generic vows, kissed, and the audience clapped like trained seals. I clapped too. 2 minutes later, Mom appeared beside me. "Your father needs a word over by the cake table." I should have said no, but I didn't. I followed her through the maze of flowers and fabric, past smiling guests and sugar-coated lies, into a curtained-off alcove near the back. Dad was there, standing by the towering wedding cake. The base was thick, ornate, metallic. He looked at me cold. "You still have time to change your mind," he said. "It doesn't have to get ugly." I narrowed my eyes. "Ugly? You mean like stealing my house and pretending it's love?" Mom stepped forward, voice sharp. "You're acting like a stranger. We raised you." "Raised me," I laughed. "You left me behind like forgotten luggage. Don't stand here pretending this is about family. This is about convenience. You want a house to pass off as your wedding gift, but But you didn't pay for it. I did. Dad's jaw clenched. You're making a scene. I haven't even started, I said, turning to walk away. That's when it happened. I felt it before I saw it. A swift blur, a crushing impact, a blinding pain just above my temple. Then blackness. Gasps, screams, a woman shouting, "Oh my God!" I collapsed to the floor, warm blood dripping down my face, staining the white carpet. Somewhere above me, I heard the word assault, a man yelling for help, another voice demanding someone call 911. I tried to speak. My mouth barely moved. The world swirled, a blur of motion. Then Renee's voice, frantic, "Logan." That was her brother, I think. Someone said he'd seen everything. Someone else mentioned a video. And then I heard sirens. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on a stretcher head, wrapped in gauze, pain pulsating like a drumbeat. A young nurse was dabbing blood from my cheek. "Don't move," she whispered. "What happened?" "You were struck. You're safe now. Try to rest." I faded out again. When I woke up next, I was in the ER at North Shore Hospital. Monitors beeped beside me. Logan, Renee's brother, was sitting in the corner, his jacket draped over his lap, eyes red from shock or maybe rage. "You're awake," he said, standing quickly. I tried to sit up. He gently stopped me. "Don't just rest. The doctor said you had a concussion and a head wound. 8 stitches. I touched the bandages and flinched. Logan took a breath. "Your parents? They were arrested at the venue." I gave my statement. So did a few others. I stared at him, unsure if I'd imagined it all. But no, this was real. "You saw it?" I asked softly. "All of it," he said. "Your dad, the cake stand. Your mom, screaming. The whole thing was recorded by at least 3 phones." He paused. "And I'm sorry, I don't even know you, but no one deserves that. Not at their brother's wedding. Not ever." I looked away. Not because I didn't believe him, but because the truth was too heavy. This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't one bad moment. This was who they were. And finally, everyone else saw it too. The next morning, hospital staff gave me my personal items, my purse, my blood-stained clutch, my phone. Notifications flooded in. News had spread like wildfire. Someone had uploaded footage to TikTok, then Instagram, then Facebook. A 21-second clip of my father swinging a metal object at my head, followed by chaos screams and the words, "This was at his son's wedding. He hit his own daughter." Over 400,000 views in 12 hours. Comments exploded. "What kind of parents are these? She should sue them into the ground. I hope she presses charges." I scrolled for hours, numb. Not at the pain in my head, but the validation in my heart. I wasn't the crazy one. I never had been. That afternoon, Logan returned. This time, he brought flowers, purple lisianthus. I looked up. "What they meant?" he said. "They symbolize appreciation and truth." I laughed. "Not vengeance and lawsuits." "Those too," he smiled, then hesitated. "Look, I spoke to my parents, Renee and Eli. They're done. His family's reputation is torched, and honestly, you deserve better than silence." I studied him. What do I even do now? Logan pulled a business card from his pocket. "This is Marcus. He's a family law attorney, smart, cutthroat, compassionate. If you're ready, he'll help you fight." I took the card and stared at it. Marcus Whitmore Family Justice Law Group. Maybe it was time. Maybe after a lifetime of swallowing pain, I was finally allowed to spit it back out with truth, with evidence, and with every ounce of power I'd been told to bury. And for once, I wouldn't do it alone. I stared at Marcus Whitmore's card for hours after Logan left. The name felt heavy. Final. I wasn't just mad, I was preparing for war. But still, the idea of suing my own parents, that wasn't something you just do and move on. That's a permanent fracture. But then again, wasn't it already broken? By the time I was discharged from the hospital, I had a stitched scalp, a mild concussion, and a much clearer head than I'd ever had while living under my parents' roof. I called Marcus the next morning. His assistant scheduled me for a consult that afternoon. The office was downtown. Tall glass windows, sleek furniture, a vibe that said, "We don't just take cases, we win them." Marcus looked like a lawyer you'd cast in a Netflix series, early 40s, sharp suit, calm but calculating eyes, The kind of man who could tear your entire life apart in court and still offer you tea while doing it. He greeted me with a handshake and said, "I've read the reports, seen the videos. What happened to you wasn't just wrong, it was criminal." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Do I even have a case? It's my parents." "You have 3, he replied without blinking. Aggravated assault, long-term emotional abuse, and attempted coercion of property. He slid a folder across the desk. "Every piece of evidence you have, texts, photos, your hospital records, any written threats, send them to me. I'll take care of the rest." It wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about truth. And for once, I wasn't scared to tell it. 2 days later, Marcus had gathered everything. Video footage from 5 separate angles at the wedding. Witness statements from Logan Renee's friend Mariah and 2 guests. I barely remembered. My ER documents, photos of the wound, screenshots of texts from my parents and Eli. Even my mother's ridiculous, "Don't be difficult, be a good sister," note was filed as psychological evidence. Marcus's expression when he read it, disgust barely masked by professionalism. "I've seen narcissistic parents," he said, "but yours weaponized guilt like a craft." We filed the case with Lake County District Court name on the docket. Tessa Lynn v. Diane and Graham Lynn. When I saw it written in black and white, I didn't feel relief. I felt like I was finally real, no longer their shadow. No longer their ghost. The official hearing date came faster than I expected. Word got out almost immediately. My phone started buzzing again. Unknown numbers, blocked calls. Social media messages flooded in. Some cousins reached out. "We didn't know it was that bad." Old high school friends DM'd me, saw the video, rooting for you. Even my freshman year roommate emailed, "I always thought your family sounded cold." Now I understand why you never went home on breaks. But silence. Complete radio silence from Eli and my parents. They lawyered up. Their attorney filed a motion to dismiss, claimed I was emotionally unstable and seeking financial gain through familial exploitation. Marcus just smirked. Let them try. We have receipts. The trial was public. And packed. Reporters showed up. TikTok drama accounts posted outside the courthouse. Some part of me hated it, but another part felt vindicated. I walked into the courtroom in a tailored gray blazer, soft blush blouse, hair pulled back to keep the scar visible. I wanted them to see the damage. Not just the one they made at the wedding. The damage that began 26 years ago. Mom sat stiffly in the front row beside Dad, both dressed in beige like it made them look respectable. They didn't meet my eyes. The moment the judge asked the jury if they'd seen the wedding footage, 6 hands went up. Yes, they had. They'd watched it, replayed it, analyzed every detail. Marcus opened strong. This is not about a single act of violence. This is about a lifetime of manipulation, emotional erosion, and one final attempt to erase a woman's independence the moment she claimed it. He presented years of my academic achievements left ignored. The phone records, the texts, the absence of any support. Then he played the video. The room fell completely silent as the screen showed Dad lifting the cake stand. The blur of motion, the thud of metal against bone. Gasps. Some jurors looked away, others didn't blink. The prosecution rested their case after 2 hours of witness testimonies and medical evidence. My part came next. They called me to the stand, and for the first time I told my story out loud. Not through tears, not seeking pity, but with clarity. I talked about the drawing I hid under my bed at age 6, the skipped meals, the times I heard Eli praised while I did the dishes in silence, how no one celebrated when I got into Northwestern, how they mocked me for choosing science, how they told people I'd disappeared. I finished with this. They didn't just hit me at a wedding. They hit me every year they made me invisible. The courtroom was still. Not even the air moved. Their defense, pathetic. Mom claimed they were surprised by how much I hated them. Dad said he lost control because I embarrassed the family in public. But neither denied hitting me. The video was undeniable. What they really tried to deny, what they couldn't, was the damage done over 3 decades. The jury returned in less than 3 hours. Guilty, on all counts, aggravated assault, emotional abuse, attempted coercion of property. The judge sentenced them to 6 years without parole. I didn't flinch. They were led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. Mom screamed my name like I owed her something. I didn't look back, because the moment the gavel hit the desk, something inside me clicked shut. The little girl who waited for love. She was gone outside cameras flashed, but I didn't speak to reporters. I walked past the noise, past the press, past the whispers. Logan was waiting by the courthouse steps holding an umbrella in the soft drizzle. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, then smiled for the first time in a long time. I'm more than okay. The first night after the trial, my house felt different. It wasn't the furniture or the lighting, it was the silence, but not the kind I grew up with, the cold, unspoken kind that came when I wasn't needed. This silence was warm, soft, like the world had finally stopped demanding my sacrifice. I brewed tea, wrapped myself in a quilt I had sewn during college, and sat on my little balcony watching the moon rise over the cherry tree in my backyard. I didn't check my phone. I didn't scroll. I didn't even cry. I just sat. Peace doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives in stillness. Over the next few weeks, the fallout from the trial rippled far and wide. Eli and Renee's wedding was officially annulled before their honeymoon even happened, according to a friend of a friend. Okay, Logan Renee had packed up her things and moved in with her sister, citing irreconcilable integrity issues. Ouch, the press didn't let up. The clip of my father's assault was reposted with titles like "Golden Child Wedding Ends in Disaster" and "Daughter's Truth Shakes Toxic Family." Online forums tore my family apart with surgical precision. Some people accused me of attention-seeking. Others called me a hero. I didn't respond to any of it, because it didn't matter what strangers thought. The only opinion I cared about was my own, and for the first time in my life, I liked the woman I saw in the mirror. One morning, about 3 weeks after the trial, I found a letter taped to my mailbox. No stamp, no name on the envelope, just 3 words in my mother's handwriting. "We still matter." Inside was a typed letter, 3 pages long. No apology, no accountability, just manipulation disguised as concern. "You've made your point, Tessa. But this public spectacle has brought shame to all of us, especially Eli. We're still your family. Despite everything we gave you life, that should count for something." I read it twice, then I burned it in the kitchen sink. I didn't cry, I didn't feel guilt, just relief, because now I knew I didn't owe them reconciliation or forgiveness or another second of my silence. The cycle ends here. Logan became a constant in my life, not just someone who witnessed my pain, but someone who helped me heal from it. He didn't ask for explanations. He didn't treat me like a project. He just showed up with homemade soup, with dad jokes, with quiet company on hard nights when the past echoed too loud in my head. One rainy Sunday, I found him planting lavender in my backyard. I stood at the door in my socks, coffee in hand, and said, "You know I didn't ask for a gardener, right?" He looked up muddy and smiling. "You didn't, but I figured your piece deserved to smell nice." We laughed, and I realized this was what real care looked like. It didn't demand, it didn't guilt, it just gave, without strings. By mid-spring, something strange started happening. People began reaching out not to gossip, but to share. Strangers. Women, a few men too. People who had watched the trial online or read my story on forums, they messaged me with words like, "I thought I was the only one. Your story gave me the courage to leave. You survived the kind of pain I still live with." I answered every message, every email, every DM, because I knew that silence only keeps abuse alive and sharing stories. That's how you break it. And then one day, I had an idea, one that started as a whisper and became a calling. What if I created something? Not just for me, but for every person who's ever been erased in their own family. That night, I called Marcus. "Want to help me start a nonprofit?" He didn't even hesitate. We launched it 6 months later. Reclaim a legal and emotional support center for survivors of familial abuse and coercive control. Marcus brought the legal brain, I brought the lived experience. Logan, with his background in finance, handled our books. We built a small team of counselors, social workers, and volunteers. We weren't just offering services, we were offering validation, Our first client was a woman in her 50s who'd been caring for her parents full-time while they emotionally tormented her. No one believed her. She had no money, no records, no support, but she had us. And when we helped her win a protective order and safe housing, she hugged me and sobbed into my coat. You gave me the courage to say no, and I realized my story wasn't just about what I lost. It was about what I was building now, a few months after Reclaim launched. Logan and I sat on the porch of our now shared home watching bees buzz lazily around the lavender. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Before you panic," he said, smirking. "This isn't pressure, just a question." I blinked. "You're proposing?" "Not marriage," he chuckled. "Just a future with you, whatever that looks like." I opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring, etched with the word enough in tiny cursive. No diamonds, no spectacle, just a promise. I slipped it on and whispered, "Yes, we didn't plan a big wedding. No gala, no guest list with people I secretly resented. Just us and 25 people who had actually shown up for my life." Marcus officiated in our backyard. Renee came too, not as Eli's ex, but as a woman who saw her own worth in time to walk away. I wore a soft blue dress. Logan wore sneakers. We served lemonade in mason jars and homemade cake, the kind of wedding where the vows mattered more than the flowers. My vow was simple. I spent years believing I was hard to love. I was wrong. I just hadn't met someone who saw me. That night, as Logan carried me over the threshold, not because tradition said so, but because he wanted to, I looked around the home I built with pain, with grit, with relentless belief that I deserved more. The same home my parents once tried to take, now filled with love. Not the loud, performative kind, but the kind that whispers in the quiet. You're safe, you're home, you're finally free. The morning after our backyard wedding, I found something unusual on the porch. A bundle of envelopes. No return address, no stamps. Just one word written in thick black ink, Reclaim. Inside were letters, handwritten, typed, folded, even crumpled. Some were on lined notebook paper, others printed on printer sheets. One was scribbled on the back of a pharmacy receipt. I sat on the swing with a blanket around my shoulders and read them one by one. "Tessa, I watched your story during my night shift. My dad used to tell me I was born to make my brother's life easier. I believed him until you reminded me I matter too. I'm 17. My mom tells everyone I'm just dramatic when I ask her to stop screaming. But after I saw what you did, I started writing everything down. I'm getting ready to leave next year. I have hope now. I'm a nurse, 54. My parents lived with me for 10 years, and not once did they say thank you. Just last week, I told them they need to move out by Christmas. I used your story to find the words. Thank you for helping me choose myself." Each letter was a piece of someone's broken finally being laid down. People who had been too afraid, too gaslit, too worn down to say it out loud. I've been hurt too, and now they were writing it to me. Me, the girl who used to fold her A+ test papers behind her bedroom door because no one cared. The girl who once asked herself if I disappeared, would anyone notice? They noticed now, and it wasn't fame, it wasn't flattery, it was a responsibility, a sacred one. Reclaim exploded faster than I'd expected. Marcus and I had planned for a slow start, 5 to 10 clients a month. But by month 3, we were getting over 100 messages a week. Stories that mirrored mine and others even more harrowing. Elder abuse, financial exploitation, golden child dynamics, manipulative guilt that stretched back generations. We weren't just offering legal help, we were offering belief. Belief that someone would finally listen and not say, "But they're your family." Because that sentence had kept people imprisoned in trauma for decades. One woman named Valerie, a teacher in her 60s, came into our office with a box of binders. Inside her father's fake medical bills, years of her forced payments, voice recordings of him calling her worthless when she asked him to cover groceries. She broke down in the middle of our intake session and said I stayed because I thought I'd burn in hell if I left him. Marcus slid a cup of water her way. I took her hand. "You've already lived in hell. Now we're getting you out." 3 months later, we helped her secure a restraining order and free housing. She sent us a postcard from Oregon. It said simply, "I finally hear myself think, and the silence is kind." As Reclaim grew, so did I. My past wasn't my cage anymore, it was my credential. I gave talks at universities, I led webinars on recognizing covert abuse, I sat on panels titled "Not All Wounds Are Visible." And every time someone asked me, "Why didn't you just cut them off sooner?" I answered with the truth. Because when you're raised to believe love is earned through obedience, walking away feels like betrayal, even when it's survival. Logan stood by me through all of it, not as a savior, not as a shield, as my partner. He never told me to move on or let it go. He brought me snacks when I forgot to eat. He texted, "You're killing it," before every event. He stayed up late editing my grant proposals when I was too tired to think straight. Some nights, I'd come home after an emotionally draining day, sink onto the couch, and just lean into his chest. No words, just his heartbeat and the quiet understanding between us. He never asked me to be lighter for his comfort. He held space for my full weight. Not long after our 1-year wedding anniversary, Logan handed me a sealed manila envelope. "What's this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Something that came in through Reclaim's P.O. box, I think. You should be the one to open it." I hesitated. Inside was a handwritten letter on thick ivory paper. Familiar cursive, sharp slanted letters. My mother's handwriting. I almost tore it in half, but curiosity, dangerous. Aching curiosity, won. "Tessa, we watched your trial. We heard what you said. I suppose there's no walking that back now. But I want you to know. Not everything was hate. Sometimes it was confusion, fear misguided, hopes you always were so quiet. We thought you didn't need as much, that you were fine on your own. If you ever want to talk, we're still your family." Mom, I read it once, then again, then a third time slower. No apology, no accountability, just excuses, cloaked in misunderstanding. The same gaslighting I'd grown up with, just now dressed in softer words. I folded the letter and slid it into my desk drawer, not to save it, not because I forgave her, but as proof that some people don't change, they just repackage the harm. And that's when I knew my healing didn't need their apology. It never had. That winter, we hosted Reclaim's first end-of-year gathering. No big lights, no red carpet, just a small community center. Tea lights in mason jars and dozens of survivors sitting in a circle with warm drinks and soft blankets. Each person brought something, a poem, a letter, a song, a recipe they once weren't allowed to cook. I brought my old childhood drawing, the emerald dragon flying over a golden castle, the one I'd once hidden under my bed. I framed it and placed it on the center table. People asked, "Did you make that recently?" "No," I smiled. "I made it when I was 6. No one ever hung it up back then, so I'm doing it now." That night, as we wrapped up, Valerie came over and hugged me tight. "I used to think starting over was for young people, but you proved me wrong." I squeezed her hand. "It's never too late to take your story back." She nodded. "You turned pain into purpose, and for once I didn't deflect, I didn't downplay it." I smiled and said, "I know spring came quietly. No grand arrival. Just the soft return of birdsong, the thawing soil under my feet, and lavender reawakening in the backyard." I sat on the porch steps one morning with my coffee knees tucked to my chest and realized, this is what freedom feels like. Not loud, not flashy, not perfect. Just peace, a kind of peace I had spent 31 years chasing. Logan stepped out behind me, still groggy, his hair sticking up on one side. He didn't say anything, just handed me a hoodie because the wind still bit a little. I smiled as I put it on. It used to take everything in me not to feel small in the quiet moments. Like silence meant something was wrong, something missing, someone upset. Now silence felt like trust, like safety. The nonprofit kept growing. Reclaim had helped nearly 300 clients in under a year. We expanded to offer workshops, financial literacy programs, and support circles for adult children navigating parental estrangement. Our most popular group was called You're Not the Problem. Every Thursday, I watched a room full of adults, women in their 60s, teens, and college, young dads, older caregivers, share stories with shaking hands and eyes wide from years of hiding the truth. And every time someone would cry when they heard another person say, "That happened to me too." We weren't a charity. We were a reckoning. And I was finally leading something I believed in with my whole hard-won heart. One evening in early May, I got a call. Not from Logan, not Marcus, not Reclaim. From Eli. I hadn't heard his voice since the wedding. I almost declined the call. But curiosity, again, that dangerous itch, got the better of me. "Tessa," he said, voice tight, "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from." I said nothing. He took that as permission to keep going. I wanted to say I didn't realize what you went through growing up. I thought you were just the quiet one. I thought you liked being in the background. I let out a dry, humorless breath. "Eli," I said, calm and steady. "You thought I liked being forgotten?" Silence. Then a long inhale. "I was selfish," he said. "And I don't expect anything from you. But I wanted to tell you that I see it now. I see what I didn't back then." There was sincerity in his tone. Maybe too late, maybe too small, but real. Still, I didn't feel much of anything. Not anger, not forgiveness. Just distance. "Thanks for saying that," I replied, "but I don't need it to move forward." He sounded like he wanted to say more, but I ended the call with a quiet goodbye. Eli, and that closure isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's a phone call where you finally don't need anything from the other side. Sometimes it's realizing that the apology doesn't change the past, just confirms what you already knew. I wasn't bitter. I was done. The following weekend, Logan and I celebrated our second wedding anniversary. We didn't throw a party. We didn't post on Instagram. We didn't rent a cabin or fly to Italy. We bought paint, beige for the kitchen, navy blue for the bedroom, and a daring sage green for the office I'd been meaning to refresh. We put on music from the early 2000s, danced barefoot on drop cloths, and got paint on the ceiling we pretended not to notice. At one point, I leaned against the wall covered in flecks of green and laughed so hard I snorted. Logan stared at me like I'd just turned the sky gold. "You look happy," he said. "I am," I replied. Finally, that night, I pulled out an old leather-bound notebook. The same one I'd kept tucked inside my suitcase when I left home at 18. On the first page were shaky words written by a girl who had only hope to hang on to. "One day I'll build something they can't take from me." I grabbed a pen, drew a line underneath, and wrote, "I did Reclaim's first gala was held 2 months later." We didn't rent a ballroom. We rented a local arts center. The walls were covered with framed stories from survivors. Not glossy photos, not fancy stats, their own words. Typed, handwritten, real. One said, "I left and didn't turn back. I'm 38. It's never too late to choose yourself." Another, "I thought cutting ties made me cruel. Turns out it made me whole." And one more scribbled in blue pen on printer paper. "I'm not waiting for them to love me right anymore. I'm loving myself right instead." I stood on the stage that night under soft string lights, looking out at a room full of people who once thought they were alone. I didn't speak with a script. I didn't rehearse. I just told the truth. Some people say blood is thicker than water. But I've learned that peace is thicker than obligation, that healing is thicker than tradition, that love, real love, doesn't ask you to hurt yourself to earn it. And for the first time, I received a standing ovation, not for surviving, but for showing others they could too. A few weeks later, I got a message from Valerie, the woman who'd once cried in our office, unsure if she deserved a life of her own. It was a photo. She was standing in front of a small cabin on a mountainside, smiling wide, holding a wooden sign that said, "Peace lives here now." I printed it, framed it, and hung it in our kitchen. It's the first thing I see every morning when I pour my coffee. The second, Logan humming some off-key tune in his socks making toast. I still get flashbacks sometimes. Little things. The sound of certain footsteps. The tone of someone's voice. A text notification at 2 a.m. that makes my chest tighten before I remember I'm safe now. But healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about owning it and then choosing a better future anyway. I didn't write this story for sympathy. I didn't survive it for revenge. I told it because I know someone out there is still trying to shrink themselves into silence, hoping it will earn them love that never comes. To you, I say, you don't need to be chosen by them. You get to choose yourself. And that's the most powerful ending of all story. 2. I'm 34-year-old Zoe, and I work as the finance director for a software business in Denver. I took a plane to San Diego last weekend to go to my younger brother Jason's wedding. There was a lot of laughter during the beautiful ceremony held outside on the seashore. Since my parents are retired and Jason and his new wife had recently paid off their school debts, I was able to fund the majority of the costs. I didn't think twice. It is, after all, family. I used my banking app to pay for the accommodation the following morning as my boyfriend Marcus and I were leaving the hotel to catch our flight back to Denver. When I saw it, I froze. "What is it?" Observing my trembling hands while holding the phone, Marcus inquired. "Marcus," I took a deep breath. "The $13,000 in my account is gone." He reached for the phone and checked right away. "Are you certain you told me you had over $20,000 only last week?" 21 is the exact number. "It's just 8 now." Marcus went through the transaction history, and as the screen grew full with names, my chest constricted. My sister Rachel Dunn received $4,000, and Kevin Dunn received $5,000, $4,000 to my mother, Karen Bloom. At 10:47 p.m., all transactions were completed yesterday evening. I was showering at the time following the wedding. My phone had been used. Marcus's eyes were serious as he looked up. "We have to give the bank a call now." As we descended in the elevator, I gave a blank nod. My entire body seemed to be on fire. From sadness, not rage, I had always been there for my family. I never demanded a cent back, and now they took this action. We arrived at the lobby just then. My phone rang. "It was my mother," I replied, attempting to sound composed. "I have a question for you, Mom." Last night, 3 sizable amounts were taken out of my account. "Are you familiar with that?" After a little period of stillness, she laughed as if I had asked her about the weather. "Oh, that you should have noticed sooner," I thought. To be honest, it wasn't as much as I had anticipated. I was taken aback. "What are you saying, Mom?" "We divided it up because Rachel felt that leaving so much in your account was wasteful. Think of it as Jason's wedding present." My mouth fell open. Shock, not tears, caused my eyes to blur. I put the call on speaker as Marcus moved closer. "That's stealing, Mom." My voice broke. "Zoe, stop being so dramatic. We are related. You're not dating. Your pay is decent. You ought to lend a hand. Are you going to live alone forever and hoard your money?" Marcus reached for the telephone. "Hi, ma'am. Zoe's boyfriend is me. You just acknowledged committing a crime. It is against the law to withdraw funds from someone's account without their consent." She gave a chilly response. "Do you work as a lawyer, or are you just interested in interfering with other people's personal lives?" "Mom, please return my phone. Who stole it to send the money?" "She said that your password was too simple to figure out, Rachel." She hung up. After that, I remained there for a while. Marcus grabbed my hand and gave it a firm squeeze. "This cannot be allowed to continue." I gave a nod, heart divided between rage and anguish. I had put my confidence in them. I referred to them as family. However, I didn't receive love. It was treachery. I can't even recall how we arrived at my parents' place. Except for Marcus's steady, determined voice next to me, everything was a haze. We must speak with them face to face. The suburban San Diego 2-story home seemed terribly far away, even if it looked familiar. Before I could ring the bell, the door opened. Rachel, my sister, was partly smiling as she stood there. "Oh, you," returned Zoe. I entered without saying a word. Mom was looking through Jason's wedding pictures in the living room. Rachel's husband, Kevin, was drinking coffee with his feet on the table. "We must speak." I spoke directly to the point. Mom's expression was composed and unaffected by the money as she glanced up. "Yes," I said, looking around the room. "Why you?" "Rachel and Kevin believed you had the right to withdraw funds from my bank account is what I want to know." Rachel gave a shrug. "Your old cat's name isn't a good choice for a password." Kevin laughed that it was too simple. "Rachel even said you wouldn't care when I told her not to do it." Heat rose through my chest as my fists clenched. I wouldn't give a damn. $13,000 was taken by you. Spare change, that is. Consider it. Mom put down the album and slowly got to her feet. Please don't exaggerate this, Zoe. It was merely a present for Jason. It seemed reasonable to me. You're not dating, making six figures. Jason, beginning a married life in debt, families support one another. To help is to consent to it. This was stealing. I tried to keep my voice steady. Why hadn't I been asked? Rachel fell into a seat because you'd say no. You always act generous, but you never really give. We're tired of begging. So you stole my phone while I was in the shower and sent the money yourselves. I turned to Marcus, trying to keep calm. Kevin shook his head, smirking. You should be grateful. They only took that much. You still have $8,000 left. I looked at Mom. You knew, didn't you? She nodded, without shame. I even suggested it. Kevin needed car repairs. Rachel has Olivia's school fees, and I use my part for medication. I don't see why you're so upset. Marcus stepped in, his hand on my back. Because it's wrong. And Zoe has every right to be upset. No one has the right to touch her money without asking. Rachel scoffed. You again. Don't you? Lawyers have bigger things to worry about than a few $1,000s in a family. I turned to her, my voice now frighteningly calm. Don't justify it. Being family doesn't mean you get to cross the line. You didn't just take money, you took my trust. The room fell silent. Only the ticking clock broke. The tension, Mom finally spoke. You're talking to your mother and sister like we're strangers. I looked her in the eye because that's exactly how it feels. Kevin stood, arms crossed. So what now? You're going to sue us? Take the whole family to court. I want you to understand. This isn't the first time I brought out a stack of documents over the previous 3 years. I've provided over $20,000 for everyone's requests. Never once was it paid back, and I never complained, because I felt I was being a daughter, a sister, family. But as of today, that ends. Rachel rushed to her feet. You won't dare do anything, Zoe. You don't want to break this family apart. I smirked. I'm not breaking anything. This family previously achieved that on its own. I turned toward the door. It felt heavy to walk. This time, though, I knew there was no going back. Not when they asked me to pay for my sacrifices. Not when they believed that I was here only to bear their responsibilities. You just did something most people never have the courage to do, Marcus murmured softly as he unlocked the car door, and I climbed inside. You're not alone, either. I considered myself fortunate once I had a steady career, a healthy salary, and no children or marriage to bind me. I could live my life as I wanted and support my family without any concern. However, I remained at my Denver apartment after returning from San Diego that day and went over every email message and bank statement. The image became apparent. I never wanted to see that photo. I retrieved all of my financial documents from the previous 3 years on Saturday afternoon. I read each transfer to family members and produced monthly statements. Every one of them had a fresh justification, a gentle entreaty, and a healthy dosage of guilt, in case I faltered. Olivia has to pay her tuition. Would you be able to lend me $2,000? I'll reimburse you shortly. The heater has to be fixed by Mom. This winter is chilly. You do not want her to become ill. I was on the interstate when my automobile broke down. Do you see me 1,000 times? I'll reimburse you tomorrow. I was never reimbursed. Nobody ever inquired about my well-being. I totaled it up. About $26,000. A figure that tightened my chest. Then there were presents for birthdays, meals for the entire family, and Christmas presents. Olivia's graduation celebration, and Mom's roof repairs. The list seemed to go on forever. I was buried in paperwork when Marcus entered the living room. Have you had any food? I gave a head shake. I'm not hungry. Take a look at this. Someone has taken advantage of me. He read my notes while sitting silently next to me year after year. This was not only a loan, there was a plan. I gave a nod. I believed it to be love at the time. However, they stated the same things. Each time I paused. We are related, or worse. You're really self-centered. You're not having any difficulties. I recalled Rachel calling me during my shift to tell me that Olivia had broken her arm. I don't have the $400 that the hospital requires up front, Zoe. Please, I sent the money right away. Later, I learned everything had been covered by insurance. Rachel put a deposit on a new phone for Kevin using the money. I was angry now, but I used to blame myself for being too sensitive. I was furious that I had been unknowingly emotionally exploited for such a long time. Marcus touched me on the shoulder. Have you considered doing something I didn't say anything long enough for him to assume I wouldn't answer? Then I spoke gently. I would call the police if someone took $13,000 from my account. Why therefore should I be silent? You shouldn't, just because it was family. They were not entitled, but I'll lose them forever if I report it. Marcus gave me a stern yet gentle glance. Have you never had them? Not at all. You were only available to them when they needed money. I looked over at him. If you experienced this, are you going to report it? Don't simply report it. Please, I would do that. For justice, not retaliation, and to ensure that it doesn't occur again. I thought about that all night. I didn't get any sleep. I read all of Rachel's mom's and Kevin's messages again. The delicate tone of control was applied to every line. I'm not sure what I'll do if you don't help. Zoe, Mom's pension isn't much. You know, you're busy. I realize that family, however, is family. Will you truly disregard this? It's only a loan. Not that we intend to keep it. However, they did end up keeping it. Not only the cash, but also my confidence. I got up, turned on my laptop, and started writing a comprehensive report that included all of the support payments made during the previous 3 years. Under the file name, I stored it. The reality, who I would send it to, and how I would use it were still unknown to me. However, I was aware that I couldn't allow this to continue. Nobody should have to endure an exploitative cycle disguised as family time. Zoe, that individual would no longer be their limitless wallet. Marcus was already at the dining table the following morning with his laptop open next to a bulky file of documents as sunlight streamed in through the living room window. You're awake. As I went outside, he remarked. After a sleepless night, my eyes were still puffy. I gave an old coworker a call. She is employed in a legal firm that deals with financial crimes. Grasping my coffee mug, I took a seat. What did they say too? This is categorized as financial exploitation of family members. If you have adequate proof, you can file charges. For a little period. I was silent as the traffic outside hummed steadily, but I could feel a storm inside. I never thought I would have to defy my own family. In a court of law, not in a dispute. Marcus, are you certain about this? My family is this. He gave a nod. My eyes met his. It's worse because of this? They took advantage of the fact that you trusted them. I inhaled deeply. Where do we begin then? Marcus moved the folder in my direction. I've put together every transaction you've made in the last 3 years. The bank statements are shown here. The emails and messages each time they requested payment. I added dates and amounts to each entry. As I turned the pages, I had the impression that I was reading the chronicle of my own disintegration. Every message, every number. I don't have enough rent. Mom needs her medication. Assist me. This is the final time. Make a deeper cut than the last. Zoe, more than $26,000. Marcus spoke quietly. 13 of those were not permitted. Include the data that was transmitted from your hotel phone, I whispered as I nodded. We then proceeded to the Financial Crime Investigation Office in Colorado that afternoon. A lady in her 40s with a name tag and perfectly pinned hair was the officer who met with us. Tina Hargrove, Financial Crimes Unit for Families, Miss Zoe Green. She looked over my report and asked, I'll need you to explain everything to me right now. It took me over an hour to tell the story from the morning till Jason's wedding. I confronted my folks after finding the missing money. Tina just nodded and asked pointed, short questions while taking notes in silence. Have proof? Finally, she asked, handing over the paperwork. Marcus opened his briefcase. Everything is here. Text conversations, bank transactions, and even a tape of the altercation at Karen Dunn's residence. Tina Zoe's mother scanned over the pages, her eyes sharpening, but her face inscrutable. This isn't unusual, she finally stated. Speaking up is rare, particularly when the criminals are family members. My hands were clenched. I once believed that being quiet would maintain harmony. Not this time, though. I must defend myself. Tina gave a nod. We'll begin a preliminary inquiry interrogating people involved, monitoring IP addresses from the transactions and confirming account activity. We'll take the matter to the district attorney if we discover sufficient proof of illegal access and theft. I took a swallow. Are they going to be taken into custody? It depends, Tina answered. They will be required to return the money if intent is established. Depending on cooperation, you could at least be placed on probation. On the drive home, Marcus gripped my hand beneath the table. The feeling of having signed a declaration of war, not against strangers, but against blood, still shook me that evening. My mother sent me the first message. I've heard that you're suing the entire family. Zoe, what's happening? Give me a call. I gazed at the display. I didn't respond. I was no longer the submissive daughter, the one who gave up without protest. I wouldn't turn around this time and would let the law do the talking. I was still throwing up in bed when the first message arrived at 6:13 the next morning. Mom, what are you doing? Zoe, have you actually reported this? After 10 minutes, my phone kept buzzing. Mom, Rachel, and even Kevin left messages all reiterating the same ideas. To blame shame, a charge. Have you gone insane? Rachel, a few $1,000 will land your entire family in jail. You're really self-centered. Kevin, Ethan, and Olivia will be impacted. Do you not give a damn about the children? I reared you, Mom, and now you're abandoning the entire family. Have you? Have a heart at all? I took a seat. My heart is racing. Not even an apology, not a trace of regret, only manipulation and rage. Bringing a cup of hot tea. Marcus entered. With a sigh, he placed the cup on the table after taking a quick look at my phone, which was glowing constantly. His voice was low as he asked, "Still blaming you?" I gave him the phone and nodded. The entire family feels as though I have just betrayed them. However, they are the ones that deceived me, aren't they? Marcus took a while to respond. They're not angry because you did something wrong, he replied, just sitting next to me and taking my hand. They're upset because you refused to be used by them for the first time. In my memory that day, the sentence sliced through the haze. Mom called. After a few seconds of hesitation, I responded, since I had to deal with this. Zoe, sharp and hurt, her voice echoed. I'm disappointed in you. What are people going to think? Are you attempting to bring dishonor to your entire family? My money was taken without my consent. Mom, behind my back. They did it. Do you believe that to be typical? She laughed. With your pay, you have more than enough. 13,000 is insignificant. And now you're degrading your own blood with that. I took a deep breath and spoke steadily. Just because someone believes they can handle it doesn't give them the right to take it from them. They didn't inquire. They made no request. They took. You're attempting to distance yourself from this family, Mom said softly. You made a decision. If you find yourself alone, don't blame me. I shut my eyes. Mom, I'm not being pushed. When they done this, everyone made a decision. I'm only establishing limits. After a deep sigh, the connection died. Rachel sent me an email 1 hour later. The whole subject line was capitalized. This family was ruined by you. It had a series of charges that I was proud of due to my wealth, my disregard for family members, and my lack of shame in taking the family to court. I finished reading it, every single syllable, and there were no tears shed. Marcus kindly inquired, "Are you okay?" after noticing that I was seated quietly at my computer. I gave a nod. "I'm simply wondering how long it took me to discover that their love was only true when I paid for it." He gave me a shoulder squeeze. "You're not by yourself. I'm yours. Others will follow those that accept you for who you are." I wrote a diary. Post that evening. I ruined the family they claim. However, manipulation and exploitation are not the foundation of a true family. Nothing was destroyed by me. I just won't be a victim anymore. The family's attorney sent me an email 3 days later. Kevin knew someone. In order to protect the children's feelings, they requested that I drop my complaint and settle the matter internally. I answered in a single sentence, "What is right or wrong will be determined by the law." It is important to teach kids that blood does not justify deception. Marcus grinned after reading my reply. "You're stronger than ever and you're doing the right thing." "Zoe," I nodded, still shaking on the inside, but it was the type of shaking you get when you finally emerge from the shadows and don't plan to return. Following a meeting with the financial crimes lawyer one horrible day. Through the glass, the doorbell rang. My younger brother Jason was standing beneath the porch roof when I looked at him. His hands were in his jacket pockets, and he seemed to be struggling with himself while his eyes remained focused on the ground. The door opened, Jason. His eyes were genuine, yet unsure as he looked up. "Would you mind spending a few minutes with me?" I gave him a quiet nod, letting him in without looking into his eyes. Tension permeated the air. All week, Jason hadn't phoned or texted. I was aware of his conflict between the truth and his former family. "Are you doing all right?" His eyes landed on the dining table where my financial records were still lying out, and he said gently, "Making ends meet," I answered. "How about you? You're aware of what's happening." His hands were clenched when he sat down. "I am aware of everything." I simply had no idea what to do. The kid I used to hold on my hip was staring right into my eyes. "Jason, why are you here?" He inhaled deeply before speaking carefully. "Though I'm not sure if you'll believe me, I had no idea they would do that." That evening, Rachel actually taking your phone and transferring the money is something I never imagined. I said nothing. I still felt the wounds of his naive commitment, but I also wanted to trust him. Previously, I am also aware that this is not the first instance Jason went on. Reddening eyes, I heard Rachel and Kevin discussing how to borrow from you without upsetting you over the previous few years. In order to know what to ask you next, I even saw Mom keeping a list of holidays. My heart was shattered as my hands clenched. And since I was a coward, you remained mute the entire time. Jason bent his head and muttered, "I felt afraid. I was afraid they might turn against me if I spoke up. I recently became a parent. I wished to avoid exclusion. I suppressed the tremor in my voice by swallowing. And now I understand now." His eyes gleamed as he said, "They did more than simply steal your money. They stole your confidence. They stole the goodwill you showed us all." I couldn't speak, Jason mentioned. "Mom told me to keep my mouth shut after you filed the complaint. She advised me to claim ignorance if I were summoned to court. I can't do that, though. Not to you, to my conscience." "No?" I turned to face my younger brother who had let me down the most. And now he stood there so courageous that I felt like crying. With firmness, Jason responded, "I'll testify. I will inform the court that this was prearranged, that it had happened before, I will be honest." I extended my hand and grasped his. "Are you certain you are aware that this will cause them to abandon you?" Jason nodded, as I know. "However, truth is what I would pick if I had to choose." "You are my choice." Jason stood tall in the witness box on the day of the preliminary hearing dressed in a black suit. As he described the occasions, he overheard his mother strategizing how to deftly beg Zoe for money. The courtroom became silent. He had heard the whispered chats behind my back that he had never dared to face, and he had seen the messages between Rachel and Kevin. I was afraid, so I didn't say anything when Jason said it. But I can't keep quiet any longer. Tina's eyes glowed with determination. My lawyer, the primary investigator, nodded slightly. I sensed a change in momentum. Across the room, sitting with pallid faces, were Rachel and Kevin. For the first time, my brother stood up, but Mom kept her head down, unwilling to look Jason in the eyes. Like a true dude. Jason was standing by himself in the corridor as I left the hearing. "Are you all right?" Quietly, I asked. He gave a nod. "Today, I lost my family." I took his hand. "No, I'm still with you, and I'm proud of you for the first time in my life." After a rainy night, the hearing was held on a somber Monday morning. I felt empty as I sat in the courtroom. The wooden plaque that read Jefferson County Court caught my attention. Even though Rachel and Kevin were just a few paces away, they seemed to be in an other world, one that was cold, calculating, and remote. Their heads were not bowed in regret. Kevin stayed calm as though he were at a board meeting while Rachel sat up straight, her lips squeezed together. Mom failed to arrive. She provided a formal justification for her absence, citing health concerns. My hand was pressed beneath the table by Marcus Zoe. "They will be held responsible. You did everything correctly." Despite the tightness in my throat, I nodded. Became quiet as soon as the judge walked into the courtroom. It was 60-year-old Judge Nora Higgins. Blade-sharp eyes. She spoke in a calm yet authoritative tone. Case number 11-8-27B is being heard today. Defendants Rachel Dunn and Kevin Dunn are accused of gaining unlawful access to and stealing personal property. Everything was spelled out by my lawyer, the financial proof. Jason's testimony, text messages, and transaction records. Financial strain, lack of malice, and a wish to settle things amicably within the family were the arguments made by Rachel's attorney, Judge Higgins, never interrupted and listened without a single emotion when I had a chance to talk. I got to my feet. The heart beats like a drum. However, I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I'd rather not be here. I never thought I would ever have to take my brother-in-law and sister to court. However they moved, money gained unauthorized access to my bank account and made no apologies when questioned. Rather, they accused me of being a traitor. The money isn't why I'm here. I'm here to explain that trust cannot be stolen and then brushed aside with a justification. We are related. There was silence in the room. I saw the judge's eyes soften a little. Marcus gave my hand another gentle squeeze. Finally, after more than an hour of discussion, Judge Higgins went back to his seat. After examining all of the case's facts, testimony, and evidence he passed, defendants Rachel Dunn and Kevin Dunn are found guilty by the court of misappropriating personal assets and gaining illegal access. Considering that the defendants have little children, and this is their first crime. The following are the court's regulations. The defendants are first given a 3-year probationary term during which they must monitor their behavior and refrain from committing any more crimes. Second, they must reimburse the plaintiff for the $12,000 that was taken, as well as an extra $5,000 in emotional damages. Third, the defendants are prohibited from contacting the plaintiff in any way by this restraining order. 5 years of Miss Zoe Green. This covers face-to-face, over the phone, by text, social media, or any other third party. Finally, the defendants are responsible for paying all court costs. I sat still, my heart frozen, not with delight, but with shock. I was expecting to feel validated, but instead I felt a chill go down my back. Rachel remained still. Kevin looked to their attorney. He had a pallid face. Jason stood up, approached me, and put his hand on my shoulder. "You succeeded." I glanced at Marcus and then at my brother. Even though I wasn't sure if it was a triumph, I was at least safe. The sun had risen as we left the courthouse, and the reins that were still stuck to the stairs gleamed in the soft golden light. The automobile door was opened by Marcus. "Would you like to go somewhere?" I gave a headshake. "All I want to do is return home. I'm worn out on the way back." My phone rang, an unidentified number. I didn't respond. Immediately after, a message appeared. "Do you believe you have won? We will not bow down." I could tell who it was without reading the sender's name. I turned off my phone and glanced out the window, watching the trees fly by. I no longer felt fear. It was Jason who sent me the initial message. "I wanted to let you know, Zoe, 3 weeks after the hearing, Kevin recently lost his job." In the kitchen, I froze. The tea in my hand was releasing steam. Jason clarified that as soon as the court decision showed up in their internal database, Kevin's employer, a regional finance company, had immediately terminated his contract. It was not only a breach of trust that led to charges of unauthorized access and theft of personal assets. They broke the stringent internal policies of the organization. However, it didn't stop there. My lawyer told me 2 days later that Rachel and Kevin's bank accounts were formally frozen for the purpose of collecting restitution under the civil enforcement order. Joint savings and all other sources of income were locked during the ensuing weeks. Marcus gave more updates. Foreclosure had been started by the bank on Rachel and Kevin's home. They had missed 2 payments in a row. I walked to the porch with Billy. The message was read by me. "I feel strangely at ease. No pain, no satisfaction. Just a clear comprehension. Every action has its price." An October afternoon, I ran into a former employee at a furniture store, someone who had worked with Rachel on a volunteer project. She leaned in and said quietly, almost apologetically, "Rachel, she looks different now. Gaunt, always irritable. I heard she's selling stuff online from home. They had to cancel their high-speed internet switch to a budget plan." I just gave a faint smile. The woman stared at me a moment, then whispered, "Maybe this is the first time she's ever had to face the consequences of her own actions." Even as the updates kept coming. Frozen accounts, house up for sale. Kevin blacklisted from hiring. I no longer felt guilty. For years, I had lived torn between helping and enduring. I used to think sacrifice was a duty in family, but now I understood. No one has the right to call exploitation an act of love. I began carving out time for myself. I took pottery classes on Saturdays, morning yoga in the park. I started journaling again. Each day I felt lighter. Marcus was always there. He never pushed me to forgive, but he was the first to teach me the difference between kindness and surrender. One evening, while we were cooking together, my phone rang again, unknown number. I answered. A familiar voice came through my Zoe. I didn't respond right away. "Can you do something to help Rachel and the kids? The house is about to be taken. Kevin lost his job. Rachel's barely holding on." I was silent for a while. "You're calling to ask for money." "No, I just thought maybe you could help your sister through this." "After all, your sisters." I shut my eyes. Part of me was still that little girl longing for unconditional love from my mother. Or then I was also the Zoe I am now, mom. If you want to help them, then teach them to take responsibility. Teach them not to treat people like personal banks. Don't call it help when it's rooted in deceit and manipulation. She didn't say a word. After a moment, she hung up. "No thank you, no regret." I set my phone down on the table and looked at Marcus. "I just turned my mother down." "No, you simply selected yourself," he answered that night when I went out onto the balcony. The fall air caressed lightly over my cheek. I muttered to myself, "Life isn't always simple, but at least this time I chose properly." Nearly a month after the trial, I got an ivory envelope with no return address, only my name penned in neat handwriting. Zoe Green. Inside was a handwritten message. "Thank you for having the fortitude to say no. Your tale in the local news gave me the fortitude to break relations with my own sister who's treated me like a walking ATM. You didn't only defend yourself. You helped many like me. Wake awake, Laura. I sat there rereading that paragraph over and again. Later that afternoon, 2 more emails came in a Facebook message and a voicemail from a lady named Teresa. She stated that her own daughter had drained her financially for over 30 years. Your story helped me realize I'm not crazy, just someone who loved too hard in the wrong way, she said as she hung up the phone. Tears filled my eyes as I clutched my phone, not because of grief, but because for the first time in my life, I understood that what I was doing went beyond simple self-defense. It has to do with empowerment. I was watering plants on the terrace one evening after work when Marcus silently emerged with 2 glasses of red wine. He handed me a package of navy velvet. Stunned, I gazed at him. I considered waiting a few more months, Marcus. But then I remembered that if there was someone I wanted to wake up next to every day, then I should do it. Someone with whom to weather every storm. It's you. I took the package open. There was a little stone that shined like daybreak inside a plain platinum band. Take action. It was its significance, not its worth, that made my heart tighten. Zoe smiled. His eyes met mine directly. Are you going to wed me? Unable to say, I nodded. In that instant, every wound and scar vanished. Marcus. I was greeted by his family as though I had always been one of them. I received a message from his mother, Helen, along with her treasured pumpkin pie recipe. As much as we adore this, I hope my next daughter does too. I was taken to try on wedding gowns by his sister, who inquired about everything from my favorite neckline to my ideal bouquet. I used to worry that I would lose myself once more when I joined a new family, but this time was different. I was not required to perform. The burden didn't have to fall on me. While brewing coffee, one Saturday morning, I noticed a familiar subject line in my email. My family isn't allowed to take advantage of you. 1 million people have read it. My post on a mental health site, which was based on my own experience, went viral. Questions, admissions, and expressions of thanks poured into the comment area. One statement caught my attention. Zoe, thank you. You are the reason I finally said no. In my life, for the first time, I bit my lip as I looked at the television. That's what used to hurt me the most. Another person's strength. Now Marcus entered and encircled me with his arms. I always thought you wouldn't just survive, he remarked. You would also assist others in rising. I turned to him and gave him a kind smile. Not because of me alone, due to you as well. Marcus and I were married under a canopy of delicate pink petals on a spring afternoon by Seward Lake, when cherry blossoms were in full bloom. Only the people who supported me throughout my worst moments were there. There weren't many visitors. The speech was delivered by Jason. As he spoke, my brother's voice wavered. At one point, I kept quiet, out of fear of losing my family. However, I learned from my sister that true family never instills fear. You feel more like yourself because of them. Marcus's hand was in mine, brimming with tears. Ever since I was disowned by my parents, I believed that I had severed all links to my family. However, I was surrounded by individuals who were happy for me that day. Nothing has been lost. I realized I had recently discovered my true home. I had a warm cup of tea in my hand as I stood by the living room window that morning, watching the sun peek through the leaves outside our porch. There was our wedding picture next to me. Marcus's smile, which is still as warm as ever, and my own eyes caught something that I had previously believed would never be found again. Calm family I used to think was absolute, a place of unconditional love. It was an unbreakable bond. However, the reality is that not everyone who shares your birthplace is deserving of a permanent position in your life. Years passed before I finally understood. Betrayal is not justified by blood. I've been accused of being ungrateful, cold, and selfish. My own mother has disowned me, even with the people closest to me. I've sat by myself in my apartment at night and wondered if I was wrong to draw the line. But in the end, I understood that establishing boundaries does not mean shunning family. It is safeguarding what remains of your confidence. If I didn't mean sacrifice, my family used to make me feel inferior, indebted, and unworthy. They manipulated me in the name of love, make me stay silent by using familiarity. But a family only exists when we surrender. Then it's not love, it's a chain. And I broke that chain, not through revenge, but through the courage to step into the light. The most incredible thing is when I dared to walk away from those who didn't value me. Life took me to those who did. Marcus's family demonstrated to me that love is more important than blood. My brother Jason demonstrated that blood relations are still capable of choosing justice above quiet. And Marcus, my teammate and companion. The person who supported me when everyone else failed is evidence of what I've always desired: a relationship based on mutual respect and trust rather than duty. I've been contributing a little piece to a community psychology magazine lately, relating firsthand accounts of escape, unhealthy familial relationships. The first article was titled, "I Set Boundaries, and I'm Not Sorry About It." Within 3 days, hundreds of comments flowed in. Many talked about how they had been exhausted and ignored throughout their childhood while attempting to win over their parents or siblings. One person wrote, "Thank you, Zoe. Because of you, I finally quit giving the required monthly contribution to my mom, even though she now labels me ungrateful. I understand that pain, and I understand the relief that comes when you stop twisting yourself just to be accepted." I don't write to attack anyone. I write to remind folks, kindness doesn't imply permitting anything. Furthermore, true love never requires you to change who you are. I was afraid of losing my family, but now I see I didn't lose anything. I just gave up on relationships that were no longer worthy of me. They can no longer shame me into quiet since I'm no longer their daughter. I'm a self-sufficient woman who understands self-love and has the strength to refuse to accept injustice, even when it appears to be familiar. Today, when I look back, I feel no regret, no guilt, because I know if I didn't stand up for myself, no one else would have done it for me. And if you're reading this, maybe you've been through something similar. If so, I only want to say one thing. You have the right to say enough. Knowing that you're not selfish gives you the authority to set boundaries. You're courageous. Zoe's experience serves as a potent reminder that no one has the right to justify misconduct by using family blood connections should never be used as an excuse for oppression, exploitation, or unspoken pain. It's not treachery to set limits, especially with family. It's an affirmation of bravery and self-worth. Zoe's family remained intact. She just started creating something better after letting go of what no longer worked for her. Via her elegance and power. How do you feel about Zoe's choice? Was she being overly strict, or was she only taking the necessary precautions to keep herself safe? For more touching family tales, remember to follow the channel and leave your comments below.